Ok?
Obrigada.
Conseguem ver?
Sim.
Conseguem ter acesso à minha apresentação só em modo de ecrã?
Sim.
Ok, posso começar então?
Sim.
Agradeço antes de mais pela compreensão e pela paciência com este problema técnico que tive. Then, good morning. I congratulate and thank for all the members of the organizing committee for the Congress for the opportunity granted here. And I also thank the audience for their attention. Plaster molding and contemporary technical author, the past, present, in the future, is a clipping of a plastic theoretical proposal developed in the master's course in plastic arts between 2017 and 2020, under a backstage of a personal paradox, an ancient simultaneously author and technician. Plastic production as an interception point between author and technician was a great repetition journey with 8 complex objects used to understand how far the balance and the interference of authorial emotion on the technical reason and vice versa contributes either to the technical repetition or artistic difference. Something contradictory emanates from the technical and authorial experiences of the work of a plaster in a fine art school, which ends up taking expression and fixed to production. The integration of the art school within the university dedicated the change of the paradigm of the enjoyment of leisure, scolae, to integrate the economic and measurable capacity for knowledge, faculty, with adoption of a new curricular structure, which Quadros Ferreira tells us also positive brings it economic limitations and constraints of lecture times and very reduced workloads. This, in fact, compromised the functional use of the specificity of art because the specificity of the teaching learning in art and the acquisition of an artistic know-how needs time. According to Núcio Ordin, in the new paradigm associated to the economy in the business schools, in order to graduate students in the time required by law and make learning more pleasant, no additional efforts are required, giving way to the transformation of classes into a superficial interactive game. According to Byung-Chul Han, the loss of tradition has led to the replacement of use by consumption. Alongside this perspective, in sculpture, it's sometimes photography or film, the final production, not as the medium of choice, but as an expression to the pressure to produce, and as a result of several obstacles which poor time management ends up dictating. Technical support and plaster, it is usually required for speed to achieve a finished result and framed by the repetition of something already tried but left unfinished. It is often the support for the direct molding of the body that is more requested to answer the pressure to produce and simultaneously be authentic, solving the delivery of performance with the use of their own form and image. Technical author acts is used as a way to shorten the student's work, which should be his main learning area. This transforms the technical author into a historical useless figure in the historical choreography. As Richard Sennett states, in some cases, may happen that not only schools don't have the right tools for the student to develop certain work, also in the workplace, the technical commitment that aspires to quality is not valued. On the other hand, following Gilles Deleuze, we realize that the act of learning is a particular and unconscious act between nature and spirit. And what is first to the thought is the break-in, the violence, and the unknown enemy, which led to the idea that being a student is an exercise of violence. Promotional exhibition initiatives such as the very impressive The Object, Sculpture on Film 2017, Infinite Sculptures 2020 by Penelope Curtis, or recently the modest stuccos and plasters of Viana do Castelo 2021, at the same time that intend to give it life, valuing the dissemination of the ephemeral art of plaster, seems to contribute indirectly to consolidate the double estrangement by replacing three-dimensional fruition with photography and by confirming the surpassing of plaster techniques with its modularization that clarify is useless and express its death. Sorry. Sorry, I'm just having a... Okay. Under this specific scenario, a close look at the molds as revealed to me, the continuous and the contracted present that exists in two opposite directions and simultaneously fixes the past and the future in the same time, only in one body, configuring the perfect metaphor for the technical author as a true no place, the threshold of sculptural synthesis. In each model and reproduction act in true resistance power that made me think that it could be an expression gesture of resistance against the disappearance of the human and his own environment. With that, I arrived to biological homeostatic imperative as an hypothesis simply because it is the deepest autonomous visceral wild world repetition acting inside of each human being, assuring it life. So, in patterns of repetition from 2017, results from the fascination aroused by a plaster sculpture, apparently anonymous, that resists and caught my attention. It is the Male Nude Academy, a 1904 plaster by Alves de Souza, an illustrious, almost unknown sculpture from Oporto, the author of the monument to heroes of the Peninsular War, iconic central work of the same city, located in Boa Vista. For the purpose of my master study and research, I proposed to Fabalps Museum make a silicon mold on it to obtain a replica that would allow me to explore and to promote both the visibility of tassel molding technology and the possibility to giving this technique a reframing for didactic and pedagogical purposes in the school. Faced with the institutional deadlock, I hoped for the modeled interpretation of one of its simulacra. This initiative would prove to be a unique authorial opportunity to rehearse and repeat the modeling of a classic figure and an unrepeatable moment that would allow me to demonstrate my real technical skills. Assume it as an authorial result from a consequence of a new artificial blockage triggered by the loss of the replicas in wax, propitiated by the realization of the mold as a threshold void of two absences, copy and model. Something in its pose and gesture seems to repeat itself. When we look at the sculpture, when and even if we consider the tradition of the repetition of classical molds used at the classical time as a teaching method, there are other images that arise memory. When we look well, consider Michelangelo's The Dying Slave and Auguste Rodin's The Bronze Age. Alfred Souza's sculpture appears as a repetition of that dynamic evolutionary phenomenon that cuts across several eras and authors. Some gesture and movement feels some gesture and different feelings echoes from Laocoon group and other two crucial images for developing this project that I relate. So this intensity image as a partial object of Jericho opened the renewed understanding about the figure and body representation will obtain in a sphere posterum the reinterpretation of a new synthesis, the symbolic body figure of the technical author. The new skull conjugates the osteological structure of the not so old world rational symbol, which is prolonged through ox heart, allusive to a visceral old world emotional symbol. In turn, Laocoon group, which represents the intense and the emotional force of the impact caused by the rediscovery of the classical tradition, motivated the creative narrative of transmission being a gift and a discovery. Analyzing Yves Klein's perform gesture allowed me to reposition the notion of the value of the intangible heritage of plaster molding making know-how achieved through professional experience as a gift agreed to the technical author by nature, which faced with the ineffectiveness and breakdown of transmission in contemporary times must be returned to the ocean nature. Here we can see the initial and the last journey objects that I choose and the new renewed cycle of repetition. As we can understand by the image also, it marks an idea and an image about the present that I referred before. In patterns of repetition was tried to rescue a technical artistic identity through the suspending gesture of a know-how that had fallen into disuse, permitted by body techniques which could make the craft effective and the molding prestigious, as Joseph Maria Subirach and had intuited, or like collaborative tribute to the other that marks the hombre positivo of Javier Marin. Here we can visualize some steps of the molding and the molding process. Each sequences can show us a few of the steps that I have done to achieve that final result that was the molds itself. Sphere posterum is the sculpture threshold prepared with a parachute to be launched from an aircraft into deep ocean in a remote and unknown area, starting from the reference to the space project Golden Record by NASA and KEO by Jean-Marc Philippe. With this project, I aim to concentrate on the workshop technique, learning new techniques of the body that would allow me to overcome the limits and reach new levels of efficiency that I do not know, able to launch and communicate it to the future in a way of gift, what seems to be the true gesture of transmission of tradition of a new old technique revisited. In this sphere, know-how of the past remains blocked for the present, yet it is clothed in the image of a future body that radiates light and brilliance, aspiring to the synthesis of surprising, however finds it.
Alcides, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Please conclude.
Okay, I will conclude. Sfera Posterum is a culmination project that functioned at the backbone of the whole journey, a sphere within another sphere, a body within another body. It is the imperious confirmation of the future task that I will have in hands as a technical author, the imperative irony of the burden of repetition that insists on remaining, because it became an object still present when it was planned to have it represented as a vanished and absent object. More effectively, it allowed creativity for another author to be combined with the effects of a technician by forcing the creation of a handmade method to technically plan the sphere, transposed to a scientific method of precision used to cut it in stainless steel. In the next, we can see more image about the first process of the tassel molding process. And here we can have a great image or a bigger image about the work. Here in the next one, we have a sequence of images about the construction of the steel container sphere. That was another process that I have to solve by myself. From here, I'm going to conclude. From here, we can conclude that in molding, past, present, and future go hand by hand with the contradiction for being a technique that affirms itself with the disappearance of a model, and for its ineffectiveness maintain tradition that distinguish it and legitimizes the use of any copy. In the light of the homeostatic imperative, the interfering relationship between technician and author is the basics that guarantees the stimulus and the challenge to act. Technician, for the author, is a manifest form of a homeostatic imperative in challenge that improve the body's techniques. It in the sense that is exploring, justified, and make possible to perform the traditional effective act and the possible transmission of knowledge, and in a certain way to fulfill itself. At the end of this contiguity, it is verified that there are imprints of repetition in all the objects, which make any incursion of interference in this domain clear and valuable, which can only result in the improvement of new techniques of the body to preserve itself and prevail here and now as in a distant future. Thank all for your attention.